And now, everyone, please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to your host, Kathy Craven.
Thank you. It's great to be with you guys today at the toward the end of day 2 of Hall of Fame. You guys having fun? Yeah, awesome. And welcome online as well. Let's give a shout out to online. All right, online. Good to have you guys too, streaming with us. So I'm really excited to welcome our special guest today. We have Culley Bunker, who is the champion, founder of Skulley FX. And we have Jonathan Mayer, who is Senior Music Manager with Sony Interactive Entertainment. Nice. That sounds like a fun job. That's cool. Tim Naylor, co-founder of Creature. Check this out. Co-founder of Creature Arts and Mechanics, creative technologies consultant with Exo Tools. Does that sound great? Are you in the right place?
It's a mouthful.
You're getting there.
Okay. Great. All right, Tim. And we have Steve Switaj, not swim. Steve, blah, 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 that's a mouthful. Steve Switaj, head of engineering with Laika Studios.
Awesome.
All right. Great to have you guys. Great to have you guys. So as you know, we're talking today about on-demand creativity. It's almost like those words should not go in the same title because of a creative process doesn't like to have demands put on it. But that's what we're going to talk about. Still, that's the way it is. So I want you guys let's start off with telling us about the work that you do, and something that you just wish people would understand about the demands of your work.
Culley.
Something I do that repeats the question.
Tell us about the work that you do, and something that people don't generally understand about the demands of the work that you do.
I'm in basically very fast, demanding creative job of visual effects. My studio handles jobs that come in about a day to 5 days, so we have to bring them in, assess what the creative responsibilities are, and put them out in no time. So something that I would say that nobody understands is the finishing process. Everybody understands the effects and the big part, but there's the little parts. We take a offline edit and we online it, which is assembling all the high-res footage. We make sure it matches the offline, and then we create deliverables. What has to go to YouTube or for out to air. It used to be tape, which you youngins probably only understand is something that you use to
wrapping presents
on a presents. Yes,
used to be something else.
Which used to have to be shipped. I'm getting on a tangent. It doesn't really matter anymore. Now we use the internets, and it goes very fast to where it needs to go. So the delivery process has changed from that, though, because then the QC process happens, and they're like, we really want to change. Can you send that back? Yeah, give me 15 minutes. But yeah, it's the finishing is definitely something I don't think anybody's really maybe at the school has never heard of, or if they have, it's a different process.
Yeah, sounds demanding. What about you guys?
So I produce musical scores, original music for Sony PlayStation first-party titles, and we also work with a lot of third-party development studios too. So we basically what most people don't know about what we do is that although I am part of Sony Interactive Entertainment, our team is actually a client service-based entity within this larger company. So it's almost like running a small music production house within the confines of a larger corporation, and we even have clients outside of it too. So we're in a very strange position of servicing a wide variety of development teams making games, and also taking care of the composers they hire to get the right music for their games. So we kind of have multiple masters that we serve on a regular basis, and it's a very tricky kind of tightrope throughout the process.
Yeah, it sounds like a delicate process. Yeah, go ahead.
My background is visual effects and film for a little over a decade. And then I started my own company with a group of business partners, and we focus on entertainment and technology. And then we were doing a contract work to do the Michael Jackson hologram billboard for the Billboard Awards. So I've spent a lot of time in the last 2.5 years, especially doing examining how to digitize human likeness and what constitute human likeness and the creative aspect within human likeness, or if it's creative at all. The biggest impact for me on creativity is in starting a business was the impact of the creative process on your financials and how to manage that. And then while you guys are students right now, you get a free-flowing ability to experience and explore creativity. You're going to come out in an industry where you need to actually keep the lights on, which requires working capital and money, which then means that the creative process is going to have to be restricted in some way. And that there's actual legal contracts that try to express how to constrict or enable that creative process. And I didn't know how actually in-depth and involved both of those aspects were to either hinder or empower the creative process.
I'd like to change my answer.
That's what he said.
Hi, my name is Steve, 92 graduate. I've been working about 25 years in visual effects. Last 4 or 5 years, I seem to have slid sideways into stop motion animation. I currently am the head of engineering for Laika Studios, world's largest stop motion company. We are in the middle of our 5th production. We just launched our 4th production, released our 4th production, Kubo and the 2 Strings, last year. It's up for an Academy Award this year.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic film.
What if the original question is what's the one unsung thing you would get out there about creativity? And I would say thou shalt plan. Year after year, I could tell you you're going to feel constrained budgets and whatnot. 10 cents spent in pre-production is $1 spent on the stage, is $10 spent in post, is a small Mercedes given to Culley.
I like cars.
That's my 10 cents in pre-pro.
All right.
I like that.
That's excellent.
That's excellent.
So tell us about a time that you may have, and this may never have happened to you guys, but if you've ever felt in over your head. Yeah, I know.
Is
it
this
may be
when we mute the
unfamiliar.
mic? I don't know.
But you felt in over your head. Tell us about that and how you handled that.
Okay, I win this one. I once dropped a $1 million Panaflex when the Panaflex Platinums were brand new. I dropped one of those along with a 10-to-1 zoom lens, along with a brand new spider head, I believe, into the chocolate river on Willy Wonka.
Oh, wow. Anybody else had that happen?
I win. Anybody? Drop no, come on.
Yeah, we're done.
You know, you pick it up, you rinse it off, you order a new camera, you move on.
I bet the insurance company was not happy.
No, but Panavision was.
Touche.
I have 2. Not to do one more than you, just 2 that I know that I had no idea what I was doing. I got called into my supervisor's office when I was at ILM, and I knew we were working on Pirates 2, and he just gave me that serious look like, come with me. I'm like, oh, crap, I did something wrong. Thought we were going to the principal's office. We ended up going to the production office, which, by the way, it is the principal's office. So the producer kind of looked at us and went, like, go in the office there, and we sat down. And the producer came over, and they laid the concept work for Davy Jones out, and they spun it around, and they slid it across the table to myself and my supervisor, and they went, how are you going to make that move? And I was like, I didn't know I was going to be in this room. Like, how do I get out of the room? I don't have an answer now. And supervisor, why don't you talk? And he goes, well, you're going to be the one rigging it. So I was like, oh, God, no. So I knew immediately I was over in my head then. Then I was the creature soup on Transformers, and we watched Michael Bay in dailies say, well, I don't understand something. Why isn't that part moving? And I want that part to move that way. And then when he talks, those parts should move that way. And then that part moves that way. And then we should have this part move that way. Oh my gosh, how about those parts? And everyone was going, he wants to move parts. It's called Transformers, people. Oh my gosh. Well, they eventually came back to me and said, Michael wants to be able to move any part on your 10,000 part Transformer at any given time. On the 5 Transformers, 50,000 parts at any shot at any time. You gonna make that happen, right, Tim? You have about a week.
Oh.
That was over my head.
You haven't told us
Had
how
no
you
idea.
How did you handle that? What happened? Just same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to say his
Yeah,
answer
yeah,
is the same
yeah.
as mine. That was for you.
Oh, that was for me.
Yeah, that was
Oh,
for you.
specifically.
That's for
How
you,
did you
Tim.
handle that? Was it handled?
Well, after taking a long walk with my friend, Andrea, who's way smarter than I am, who's on a
wasted
different
time.
movie, and saying, how do I do this? Really, it's about, and this is what we've been talking about actually all week with students, is that when you're posed with those kind of situations and those problems, is you have to get into the mindset of how to break them down into smaller elements to be able to solve one small chunk at a time. And before you know it, you've bitten off the larger chunk of the problem. If you let the problem in its entirety overwhelm you, you will succumb to the issue of the problem. So it is about a mental focus. And the greatest skill set, I taught a bunch of workshops, this morning and yesterday about Maya, and instead of telling them individual things in Maya, which they can learn on their own, it was trying to teach them how to break down a large problem into smaller components so that they can attack it successfully. But it takes a mindset and an ability to do that so you don't have your confidence shaken. So in both those cases, it was, okay, let's take this as an elemental approach. Let's get my team together. As a supervisor, my job was not to come up with the answer myself. My job was to get everyone in a room, treat them as equal. Every idea had value, and it was a safe place to dump any blue sky value out on the table. They knew that no matter what they came with, I was going to appreciate their input and value them. And if they had an idea better than me, guess what? My job is to embrace that and get it moved forward and then give them the credit later.
Yeah.
So that's how I tackled Transformers.
Nice. And the rest is
He
history.
faked out Michael Bay by having the creatures move in slow motion against a billowing American flag. Totally distracted him.
I'm glad you noticed.
Jonathan, what are your thoughts?
Well, the first project I ever worked on for PlayStation was a game called Siphon Filter Dark Mirror, and I was hired to score the game. I came in as a composer, and my background professionally up to that point had been 10 plus years of doing music production and engineering. So I had a wicked imposter syndrome thing going already as far as being hired to compose the score for this game, but it was a way in for me. And I came into the first meeting, and I had demoed. I'd been demoing for months and waiting for people to get back to me, and I finally knew I had the gig. And I walked in and I sat down with the guy who would later become my boss, and we kind of talked through the project, and he was laying out the scope of work, and it was a couple hours of original music, and it needed to be delivered a certain way, and then they were looking for my help on some of the implementation since I had a production background. And I'm writing all this down, and I'm thinking about it and stuff. And then I asked the most important question, when is all this due? And he said at the end of October, and it was August 20th.
Seems like enough time.
Yeah. Hey, what's the problem?
So that was, and the other one was working for the same guy was and when I came off that project, he had been managing a game called God of War 2. Without me, he'd been basically collecting music and getting assets from composers for that game. And we kind of had the same problem where he let all this work build up and then handed it off to me. And he sent me a long email basically saying, hey, do everything moving forward on this project. And I started to try to get organized because I was freaking out about how disorganized it was. And on his way out of work that night, he walked into my office and he saw me. I was actually building a database with FileMaker Pro to just try to figure out, because I couldn't even make sense of any of this. And he patted me on the back. He was watching me for a while, and he patted me on the back, and he said, all right, well, I'm going to go now. The trick with this kind of work is you just let it pile up for a while, and when the pile gets big enough, you can just jump in the middle and flail around until it all gets done. And he left and closed the door. And to Tim's point, I mean, the solution was the same. It was to take little bites. But the cool thing about that, for me, looking back on it, is that I did panic. I won't lie and say I didn't panic, but I dealt with it. And those two moments, to me, are huge opportunities that I had. And so I'm really grateful that I had those opportunities. And I think being able to, react accordingly in those situations really does pay off in the long term.
That's awesome.
Nice.
I'm probably late for a project right now. I think I've been underwater for 10 years. I literally have drives show up on my door. I have no idea what they are. And a producer called me the day after going, is that job done? Did you forget to call me and tell me what I'm supposed to do with this job? No, I've really had drives show up. I have no idea what they are. I usually know who they're from, the same guy. But we deal in very fast-paced situations. So luckily, there's a limit to what can be done in the amount of time. So we just have to pick our battles. And really just express what we can do in the time and manage expectations. Managing expectations is the biggest job we all have to do. You either have to manage the expectations that you have no time and it's going to be this, or you have this much money and this much time, we can give you the world. So, and then trying to manage the stress in between is really a personal thing for everyone. You know, you need to go to your safe space. I don't want to say that, but your place where you can hopefully relax your mind. I, unfortunately for myself, love scripted television. So I go home and I watch a nice TV and I forget about the day. And then as soon as right in the middle, a client probably calls and I have to go back to work. But it's managing expectations for yourself even. You have to you got to know what you can do too, and then try to rise above it.
Kind of along those lines, do you find that clients or other departments you're working in always meet their deadlines that are affecting your work? Why don't you comment on that?
No.
No.
Let's manage some expectations.
Do you want to go back this way?
No, you guys talk amongst
Oh, look,
yourselves.
a work of fiction. Okay, I'll go. You would think that stop motion animation, which is what I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, would be the slowest paced thing in the world. But the problem is, and in some ways it is, it's a very long lead item thing. But the problem is you will get a certain distance down the path and you will realize that you have dramatically overlooked something, because it's usually the first time we have a lot of first offs at Laika. We're always pushing the limit, and you'll realize that all of a sudden this creature, I did a talk this morning about a creature that had to be 18 feet tall. You know, a normal stop motion puppet could be beat up by this water bottle. What I tend to find is that stuff drops in at the very last moment. It's not an act of malice, but it rolls out of another department. It's like, no, we couldn't do it this way. You got to solve the problem on your side. And one of the things I find is that faced with that, it really behooves you to step back and have a look at the big picture and take a minute or 2 or 5 to before you launch into a solution to figure out your architecture, because the big things, the architectural sweeps, are something that you're not going to get another swat at when you're in it for 2 weeks. So although there's an enormous amount of good to be said for just biting off a little piece, just get something done. I've always told people, look, just make a cable or something, put some points on the board, just do something. For the big stuff, I really advocate stepping back for a day and examining the big architecture and sleep on it, get up, take a shower, and realize you had it all upside down, because if you're going to change everything in big strokes, you want to do it early. So it's a weird combination of don't rush into the big things, but wow, once you're in it, just keep going. Just, you walk in and you're like, okay, I can't do that today. Let me just make a cable I know I'm going to make. That way, I know I need the cable. It's going to be on the shelf. But yeah, try not to run panicking out the door and make bad decisions on the big architectural stuff, because you can get 2 weeks down the line and realize that, wow, I've installed it backwards, and now everything's got to come out. That's totally useless advice, but there it is.
It's very useful.
I think that was great advice.
Never install backwards. That's great.
That's a good one.
I've done that so many times. Measure twice, install once.
If you have a very clear pipeline
that you're involved in and you're a certain spot in the production and you continually see things that are dropping into your department that are late, take a moment, take a walk. Like, wait, why do I have to be on Saturday? Because you guys were late? Are you serious? I have to be here on a Saturday because you guys were late? That's not fair. And you guys get to go home? What the heck is going on with that? Well, that happens. And I used to react to it. Now I respond. And the biggest thing that you can do, especially in kind of like digital pipelines, is take a step back, do exactly what Steve said, and then say, is there a problem that they're consistently having that we can actually solve? That they might not know how to solve. Remember that they might not have the technical expertise in their department to actually solve the problem, and they're just flailing at it as well. So a lot of times, asking questions can be one of the healthiest things to do. Instead of accusing them or getting super frustrated, you say, hey, I've noticed, are you guys having some problems with one or two things? Like, what's happening? And then I say, oh yeah, we have no idea how to do this. There's no one in the department that's actually gonna help us. Really? No one's? Okay, well, I know how to do that. Okay, then what happens? You can transform yourself from a whiner and just complain about it to a solution maker. And then when layoffs come, who do they want to keep around? Solution maker, right? So instead of thinking as a cause and effect, us versus them, which is the way I used to think, it's a transformation in your mind to kind of go, okay, wait, I want to be a solution maker. I might not be able to deliver the solution. I might not be that person, but I can start asking questions and I can investigate gently, slowly, without accusation, and try to investigate what might be happening, because you never know. You might be able to provide part of the solution.
I think talking about, just going back to talking about deadlines, working on video games, we generally hear things like at the beginning of a project, like, our game's going to be in stores in November, and we're going to be content locked in July. And it's really hard to keep a straight face in a meeting like that. And so we plan every production with two deadlines, basically. And there's the real deadline, which, based on our experience, we all know what that's going to be. If the game's in stores in November, then we're going to work probably through September. It takes about 6 weeks to get a game, mastered and in stores. So if you know that, you can work backwards. But then, what these guys are talking about holds true for us too. It's a chain of dependencies thing, because like for me, producing music, we're so affected by everyone upstream from us. And my favorite story was, again, going back to God of War 2, was we had a hard deadline for the cinematic lock on that, for all the mixing. And we had about 90 or 100 minutes of cinematics in that game, and they were going out to a post house to be finished, and so all the music editing and composition, everything had to be in those movies. And we were looking at what was supposedly the final pass before they went to post, and the timing was all screwed up. Like, every single cinematic had shifted a little bit, and so I called the producer, and I said, we need a little more time to fix these. It's not a big deal. We're offering a solution. I said, I need X number of days. We're going to re-edit all of them, and we're going to deliver. But they can't go to post yet like this. And she started yelling through the phone at me and said, we've passed our deadline. You don't have any more time to work on these. They were picture locked when we said they would be. And I said, well, they're all different now, so something changed. And she said, well, the edits moved around, but they're the same length.
But nothing changed.
I hope you recorded that. Ouch.
Wow, good story.
I just drew a blank. No. Well, with what I do, finishing, obviously it's the end of the process, so everything holds us up. And the problem with that is marketing sets the date for the release of almost everything we do. So right there, you can imagine how big a problem that is with our short schedules. So a lot of the time what will happen is the creative editorial process will run way into our schedule. So we'll be waiting days and days. It seems like editorial has all the time in the world, but our deadlines never move. So as we are waiting for a job and Friday comes around, and Friday is the day all jobs come in because they're due on Monday. For us, a lot of the time that's what will happen. The editor and the director decide they want their weekend, so Friday at 5 p.m. we get our online. And we have to work all weekend, 48 hours straight to get them done. So yeah, it is the upstream definitely affects the downstream. And
especially you.
usually on Fridays.
Yeah, usually on Fridays. Yeah. All right. What do you guys say about the creative process? Because, we all know that it's a really personal process a lot of times. It doesn't necessarily understand deadlines, but it has to. So how do you make those two play nice together? Creative process wants to just play and explore. Deadline is the producer that was yelling at one of you guys on the phone. How does that jive together? How do you get those to reconcile? Or maybe you don't?
I really like the saying, inspiration is for amateurs. I think that, we've kind of already said this, but I think you have to do things. So like if something needs doing, you just need to start doing it. And that sounds really oversimplified,
Yeah,
but it's the truth. You just can't wait.
I'll take an idea that the director wants to do. I'll flush out a few ideas and send them off and see what sticks. And if nothing sticks, we don't put it in. There's only so much time. So the creative process is definitely, it's limited by time. It's I guess time is the ultimate factor of limiting creative process. I think there's a famous painter said, a painting's never finished, it's just sold or something like that.
Well, and it's
Just stopped.
But your point about giving a client options, I think, is huge too, because you have that opportunity early on to just
if you just give
include them in the
a
process.
client one option, they're going to give you a bunch of notes on one option. If you give them 4 options, they're going to say, I like this one. I like it. Actually, what they're going to say is, I like a little bit of this in 1 and this in 2 and this in 3 and this in 4. And can you combine them back? So that happens. Sometimes they actually go, I like 2.
I think passivity in the creative endeavor is a killer, because almost every creative endeavor in our world is exactly what Jonathan said, multiple dependencies. So if you're sitting there waiting on making a decision of creativity, which a lot of directors do these days, you're affecting massive teams of people who are either doing revisions of work that's irrelevant, because that's not, at the end that's not going to be what your vision is. Being decisive and not passive is going to actually save a ton of time and money, which goes back actually to integrating. Can I borrow mini thunder?
Please.
Which is about planning. Most people think that creativity and planning are, antimatter and matter. They actually need to be paired together. They actually require one another, because you can sit there in blue sky all day long, but sooner or later you got to make something. And how you make it is going to be make or break on whether or not you can keep a business afloat, or get the movie finished, or get the game made, or get the music integrated into the game. So without planning, your creative endeavor will die. That's why they actually are symbiotic. And for the longest time, I thought they were totally the antithesis of each other. Now, one without the other can't really have legs and run.
The worst words I can hear from somebody is do something cool. They're not planning. They want me to do something for them, and then what's going to happen is, who knows what that is.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works out, and you're a hero, and sometimes they look bad because of you. But it's really
in my line of work, we have a saying. It's a director who, I can't hate it till I see it.
Oh.
Like that. You know what I try to do? I try to ally my department with as many other. I try to really reach out and touch as many other managers as possible. This is getting very uncomfortable, huh? I try to reach out and reach into as much of what the other departments are doing as possible, to keep aware of what they're doing, because I can see, if I know what they're doing, I can kind of see what's eventually going to end up on my plate coming down the pike, and I know that they're going to try to do this, but eventually they're going to need to do it the other way, and I'm going to get involved. We have some very large creatures that I know are eventually going to have to be carried around mechanically, regardless of whether the rigging department thinks they're going to, puppet department thinks they're going to do it one way, and the rigging department thinks, no, they're going to fail and we're going to get it. And I know, no, you're both going to fail and I'm going to get it. So I try to reach out into as many departments as possible, and that allows me to get upstream in the process. When I used to do motion control, I did a lot of commercials. And in commercials, there's this thing where you get onto the set early and you're working with the DP, and he sets up something, and you do this complicated thing, on food, whatever, product shots or whatever. And then at some point after a couple of hours of this, the advertising agency comes in, and they have their own ideas. And you're going to change everything for 2 hours with the advertising agency, and then sometime in the middle of the afternoon, the client actually shows up. And you're going to change everything again, and you end up spending the rest of the evening sitting down with the client, doing what the client would wants, and if you had just talked to him yesterday, it would have been in the can by noon. So I try as hard as I can to swim upstream and figure out where the problem's going to originate and try to get into that. Because that alerts me to the fact that it's coming down. It's eventually going to end up on my plate, so I can go back up and go, look, I see this coming. It's going to end up with me. What if we do it this way? You take that half of it, and I'll backstop you here, and we can each take the half that we're good at, and that cuts down both our jobs, and gives me another couple of weeks to work on it. So I try to swim upstream as far as I can. And I guess I can do that more effectively because I'm in a quasi-management position. But, that's how I try to be effective.
Thanks. We're going to throw it out to the students for questions. So if you're here in the audience on campus, make sure you raise your hand up high, and they will bring a mic. Someone will bring you a mic. Those students that are online, you can go ahead and type in your question in the chat window, and there will be a moderator to facilitate those questions as well. All right, so got the mic? Ready to go?
Hi, my name's Blake. Wondering, you guys talked about all the deadlines coming up. We got to be creative. Inspirations for amateurs. We just got to get up there and do it. And that's true. But I'm wondering if you have any tips, like whenever you got to sit down, you got to do it. What do you do to help yourself ensure that you are going to be able to do it? What sort of processes do you go through?
So before that day comes, I think the most important thing to do is to practice a lot, whatever it is that you do. I think all these things, all these different sort of fields we're talking about, at the end of the day, it's a craft, and it's something that, you log your thousands of hours in, and things become habitual. So if it's in my world, if it's music or music production, that, while we're trying to innovate, we're also not reinventing the wheel, and we're relying on all the collective experience we have. Everything we do is team-based too, and I think, and this was said earlier, but I think relying on your team and listening to others and listening to your director for inspiration and all those kind of things is really important, to just kind of have the confidence and a clear head when you get into those situations.
I guess, and it's weird, experience is a big deal. And I realize that doesn't help you when you're starting out yet, but after you get a couple thousand hours of this, the thing that experience allows you to do is cull out the really dumb ideas. You can get rid of 80% of the chaff, and you're left with something that's mostly wheat. And that's really critical. You can eliminate silly concepts right off the top. Sometimes that works against you because you tend to get set in your ways, but there's a balancing act. But once you get it down to what you have to accomplish, once you're looking at this enormous hairball, I always tell people just bite off a chunk. You can't eat the whole elephant. So just, start with an elephant ear sandwich, Bite off a chunk that you can't, even if it's stupid. I think I said something about making cables. I make cables therapeutically. I just pull out the soldering iron and I sit there because I know I'm going to have to do it. And while I'm doing it, it just cooks in the back of my head. But just break off a piece and put a point on the board, because sooner or later you're gonna have to, you're trying to run down the field. There's the goal. You're gonna have to do that. Do that and do that. So just pick up a stripe and do it. Because even at the very least, you're still closer.
For me, and especially in a position of hiring, is making sure that you're around extremely competent people. Because if you can't trust your team, you'll never answer that question. So there were times where stuff wasn't working. It was 2 weeks till a deadline. So for example, for Michael, we couldn't get his hair to work, and there was 2 days. And they're not moving the deadline for you. It's like a plane. And plane's leaving. They don't care if you're there or not. They're going to close the door. It's going to go. Aluminum tube's going to be in the sky before I know it. They don't care if you're there or not. So the show's going to go on, right? So we trusted, one of my business partners, Andrea, super, rocket scientist genius. And he just looked at me and goes, I got it. And I've been working with Andrea for 15 years. And Andrea never dropped anything. Right? He's got like CG sticky hands, never drops a ball. So if you're around really competent people, you project trust in that. So I didn't come up to him every day and be like, how you doing? How you doing? Where's the hair? I didn't go like producer on him, hey, where's it at? Where's it at? Just went, okay, cool, thanks. Turned around and walked away. What happened a week later? Everything was solved. So as you guys get to know one another as students, try to find the people that have the will and the interest to know and master their craft. So you've heard from my left and my right about thousands of hours to master a craft. Find people who will go on that journey with you who want to master their craft. Because then when you're in the crappy part, in the middle of the night on a Saturday to try to solve a problem, what do you want? You want the guy who's logged in 10 hours and could care less, or do you want the guy who's logged in 15,000 and is ready to rock? Which one do you want? That's up to you to choose who you want to surround yourself and your community, right? And you want to go on that journey to master your craft together, because it's the other person that might be the solution.
One thing I want to riff on that is that you're talking about collaborating with other people, and I got it. I'm running with it. One of the things I find is really helpful is that it's really tough to go to your boss and say, I am drowning here, and I try to constantly talk to my team. I try to be really honest about where are you? How you doing on that? Can we? And I move work around, and I try to in a non-threatening way, try to constantly appraise where people are. I try not to get all producer, right. But it's sort of like, so how are we doing? Do you need this? Do you need that? Bob is good with this thing. Joe's good with that thing. Can we offload a little bit of work, or alternately? And can you take a little bit of work from, guy X? But situational awareness is really, really key if you're working in a team, because, you work on the model of the ship heading toward the iceberg. If the guy up in the pilot house has been slamming on the wheel trying to figure out why the ship won't turn, and you don't know about it till he sticks his head out 5 feet from the iceberg and says, I have a problem, then it's a big deal. If you've walked into the wheelhouse an hour ago and he's like, this isn't going to work, you can walk to some other part of the ship and do some other thing to turn the ship. Lead time is really important. So I find when I'm on a team, I just sort of casually, because again, it's tough for you guys to tell your boss that, I'm bogging here, but you do have to create an environment where people can tell you that, where you can have honest conversations, because even people who are excellent in their craft can open up a can of worms that is the wormiest can of wormiest worms that has ever wormed out of a worm can without realizing it. And it's sort of like, no, it says just normal one big worm in here, and there's like a zillion of them. I don't know what the hell happened. And, it can be hard to go, I opened what I thought was this. I'm really stretching this metaphor, but you know where I'm going with this. Yeah.
I had to do that when I almost lost my job. I almost lost my job when I was at ILM because I really sucked at cloth sim. I couldn't master that craft. But you know what I did? I knew a guy who was mastering the craft, and instead of just saying, hey man, I kind of suck, can you help me? I printed out the entire manual, proprietary technology at ILM at the time, entire manual, and I studied it for a week, and I showed where I had highlighted where I was studying. And I walked up to him and I went, I've noticed that I'm the last guy to final my shots. I'm really struggling, but I've taken the initiative to try to study. Because instead of just saying, I suck, hey boss, I'm sucking at this, they're like, well, what do you want? Now it's my burden? No. I said, no, it's my burden. It's my problem. Here's how I'm trying to fix it. Can I take you to lunch? Can I take you to coffee? Can you help me figure some things out? And when he saw that I took the initiative, it totally changed the dynamic, and he spent 2 hours every single day out of his own time to help me. and I went back and I saved my job. So being able to have situational awareness on when you are flailing, but taking the initiative to try to fix it, and then engaging with someone who knows, it's a good practice.
They said enough.
You look like you're poised and ready. You good?
I'm good.
Okay.
I was poised and ready for a new question.
Okay, new question.
Hey guys, Zachary Cook, Recording Arts. Thank you guys so much for being here. Chose to be here with us. You could have been doing other things, and your time is valuable. My question is actually a little bit more serious, kind of bouncing off what he had just said a minute ago. But was there ever a time that you were faced with a project that you were not able to complete, whether it would be personal life got in the way or the rug was pulled out from under you from the project, and how did you deal with that?
I definitely had a job like that, and it was a huge job with my favorite person to work with ever. We were on the phone with the artist, and she was like, "This is what I want, do this, and we were like, okay. And she goes, give them however much time that they need to do it. I don't know why she said that, but she was like, wow, that's fantastic, thank you. And as soon as she hung up, the producer went, you have 5 days. I said, I need 3 weeks. And they went, you need to hire more companies, you just need to get it done. And I basically gave them an analogy. I said, you can't take 9 women and a baby and make a baby in a month. It's just not going to happen. They didn't believe me, so we proceeded to hire a bunch of companies, spend a lot of money, and deliver the job that was not done. It burned me to the core because I knew it was never going to get finished. It was just impossible. And it really hurt because my favorite guy that I like to over-deliver and just, and he's been fantastic on all our jobs. I was going to let him down, and it wasn't my fault. And I talked to him, and I was just like, we are doing our best, and I said we were given impossible odds. He says, don't worry about it. I understand, and we delivered the job. He almost took his name off it, but on the other side, they understand too. Sometimes it's out of everybody's control. So we got out of it unscathed, but it really stressed me out and hurt a lot that I wasn't going to be able to live up to his expectations, even though it was impossible to do.
Why am I on the end? Okay.
My neck hurts from looking this way.
You don't log 25 years in this business without having some serious personal failures, and I've had a couple of projects go south really badly. I had, for example, a car commercial. We got into it. It was a motion-controlled orbit around a car while they did some creative stuff that was going to change, panels of light and all this other sort of stuff. And walking into it, I kind of knew we were in trouble when we walked on stage. The equipment was really wrong. The shot wasn't the way we expected it. For a variety of reasons, I knew this one was going to crater. And yet we still hammered on it for 3 days. We put in, over the course of 5 days, the project went over 100 hours. And they eventually called in another crew to replace us. And I'm going to go with no fault of our own, but that's not really true, because when I walked onto the stage and felt how spongy the floor was and opened the boxes and seen the equipment that got sent and realized that the director had something completely different in his mind than what we could physically accomplish given the situation, because it had been prevised with like a 300 millimeter lens from 1,000 feet away, blah, blah, blah. I knew we were going to crater. And I kind of didn't know what to do, because it's sort of like, this is going to go bad. I know this is going to go bad. But we beat on it as hard as we could for 3 days, and the client kind of lost confidence in us and brought in a rival crew, and we did the noble thing, and we had an 80% solution, and we offloaded all our data to them and put them 80% of the way to the goal. And they looked like heroes. God damn them. But it was the right thing to do. We walked away, we took a loss on it, and we put them over the goal line, but, it's the roll of the dice. You know, sometimes you fall on the sword. You don't like that, but it's kind of unrealistic if I'm going to get up here and go rah rah rah. We never screw up, and it's not the case. Sometimes it's going to suck bad. You know, you pick up and you do the next job.
We pick ourselves up, Bruce.
We had a visual effects supervisor that my company was working with, and he was challenged to kind of give us animation notes in a form that we could translate and understand internally to give him back what he wanted. Is that his fault or our fault? I don't know, but we couldn't make it work. And because I was one of the owners of the company, I was supervising the project, and one day I had to wake up, go to work, and I had to tell him that we are not able to finish because we could not translate what he wanted, and so we had to stop the project. And if you know anything about how these contracts goes, if you complete the work, you get money after the project's done, your last installment payment. So guess what we didn't get? The last installment payment. Now because I'm a business owner, have my employees already done the work? Yes, they have. So if he's not going to pay them, who does? So I had to go to the bank, my own bank, and I had to get out money and make sure that those people were paid. So yes, failure can be very, very painful. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I'm thoroughly depressed.
Thanks for that one. But it's actually, I think it's really good and important because a lot of times I believe that students have a perspective that because we're behind this black fabric, that we know something that everything we've done has this touch of gold to it. But the reality is the difference that we have is that there's the perspective that we do take on failure, which is to pick ourselves back up and go, I cannot believe we could not figure out what he was trying to say and translate that into something usable for our animators to do. Man, that is my fault. I sucked at client management. Wow. The next time I interface with a client, I'm going to say, let's be clear. Let's make sure we have the expectations clearly defined in the contract, or let's sit and take another moment before you hang up. I have a couple extra questions for you, if you don't mind. Should have done that, didn't. Was passive about it, didn't have my situational awareness hat on, and I got completely destroyed financially, personally.
I personally take on small, short jobs, and I took on a long job that was presented to me in a very different way than it ended up being. But the contracts, and when their stipulations, the handoff took a month. And we didn't know what we had for a month, and the contract would enable before we had everything. So after we had everything, we're like, this is a lot. It was an animated movie, and there was a lot more layers than was shown to us in the spotting session. So there was 3 or 4 times the work, and we were already locked in the contract. There was nothing we could do but do the work or not get paid, and we're already halfway or a quarter way into the project. And to get all the rest of the money that we were gonna lose money on, we still had to do the next 3 months of work. That was, it was like, oh, that's rough. There's an analogy, but I'm not having it right now. It's bad.
Can somebody ask a question about like puppies and bunnies?
Yes. I love my job. Yeah. I do. Yeah. I feel like every time we get up here, we're talking about, we go down a black hole. And I'm like, we really do love what we do. To be able to go through this pain that you guys are hearing.
Yeah, you're not hearing any of them say, and I'm done. But I mean, they may have their days, but yeah, it's I know it's not puppies and kitties, but I appreciate you guys. This is a good question that was asked about, what is it really like? I mean, that's the reality of it. It's going to happen. There was a class here at Full Sail that used to have students do a failure resume. This is everything that did not work that I did, and this is why, and this is what I got from it. So thanks for that.
You ever see the thing Elon Musk does where they ask him about what happened to his company, expecting him to talk about, PayPal or something, and he starts, first I had an ice cream stand, and I lost $1,000 on that, and then I did this, and I lost, and then this, and then this, and then my partner sued me, and then, and then the 7th company was PayPal.
That is it. That's how it works.
Absolutely. All right. Who has a puppy and kitties question?
It's not
Just
a puppies
kidding.
and kitties question. It's from the Chat Live group. Karina from Graphic Design asks how you guys deal with non-creative management or clients who are very opinionated or pushy and want numerous redesigns.
You have a good lawyer. You read your contracts really well.
It comes back to managing expectations as best as possible. I mean, you have to know how to push back in a nice way. That's why you have producers. Producers are the people that can really tell you to go to hell, but afterwards you want to go there. So that's your protection. When you have a company, you need to be protected. You can't do everything because you get emotionally invested. You just need somebody not emotionally invested to protect you. I think that's good advice.
Yeah, and I have a slightly different perspective currently, just being in-house at a big company, because I can't. There's no protection, right? And those folks, I think the most important thing for us is to that emotional detachment you're talking about is really important for us. Is to try not to be defensive about your own work, and that's
hard.
Yeah, and it's really tough, and so, like we were talking about earlier, presenting clients with options is really important. But iteration in the world I come from, I mean, we say things like fifth time's a charm and stuff like that, and it's just like a big, it's a fact of life, and so I think we expect to iterate right from the get-go, and I think it's important to remember when you're a creative and you're dealing with other people, and like a really simple example is if I mix a track. So if I'm in the studio mixing and I've worked on somebody's track for 10 hours, and then the client walks in and has a note for me, my ownership of that thing is I've still done 100% of the work up to that point. So to get super attached to some little note that person may throw on top, if you zoom out and think about it, is really silly. So if somebody walks in and says something like, turn up the bass, I'm not going to explain to them why the bass is at the level it's at and how I arrived at this point. I'm just going to turn up the bass. And everything we do nowadays, maybe not in stop motion world, but a lot of what we do is digital, and so undoing things is really easy too. And so I think if you have an appropriate amount of detachment, or at least display that outwardly to your client, you're doing a good job.
I think there's a rule of three, at least in the industry. It's 3 revisions. Give them 3 revisions, and after that, you need to start talking about, more money or more of something. You need to. Whenever you talk to the client, tell them, we're going to do this job, and after you get the initial design, you get 3 revisions. And you can also play it by ear. You know if you've done something that doesn't work out, and you can give more if the project is appropriate. But try to stick to 3 revisions, and stick to the contract or the verbal agreement, and just try to do the rule of 3.
It can be tough, admittedly. Early in my career, I did a lot of work with Rhythm and Hughes. Lovely people. John Hughes, best guy in the world.
One of my favorite jobs.
They had.
I worked there. It was my favorite one.
Oh yeah, but they had a deal a couple of years ago where they got wrapped up on Life of Pi, and it was just, they did wonderful work. They really do. Just nicest people to work with, but they just got in a situation where it was revise, and they got the Oscar for it, and during their acceptance speech had to announce that they were closing down the studio because Life of Pi had put them out of business. So, you have to work with people, producers directors, producers, everybody tends to want things their way and want revisions their way. And frankly, look, when's the last time you went to, if you go to Burger King and you say, I want no onions, and they say, you must have onions, you'll go, no, dude, I am the customer, I want no onions. And then the same thing works when you're a producer, but you have to be willing to have the conversation that this is still a job. We can't do it infinitely. If it means you don't come back for another set of effects next week, I'm sorry, but if it means I don't bid on the next contract, that's like one less contract I'm going to go broke on, because that's where it's going to go. So there has to be, you really need a good producer or some money man who, it's the art of saying good doggy while you reach for a club with the other hand, carrots and sticks. You have to provide a certain amount of carrot, but you got to be able to walk away. It's like sooner or later you're going to get a job that really, you do the first job, you lose money on it, they come back, bid another job, and you're like, no, I cannot afford to take your money. So there you go.
Who's got another question? Go ahead.
I don't know if this is a puppies and kitties question, but I'll do my best. Seeing you all here, animation, music, video games, and all that, do you have any advice for those that are in the creative writing for entertainment portion of the school? Do you have any advice for writers? Please?
Yeah. Write cool stuff.
Sorry. A little more specific would be nice.
For people who are aspiring to be writers, when you watch a film, watch how many writers are listed on the film, and then tell me if you think that's were the only people that actually wrote part of the script. How many movies have you seen with only one writer? Can you count them on one hand? Out of all the movies you've seen, maybe. So writing is the same creative endeavor, which is you're going to have to depend on other people. You're going to get reviews and notes, and you're going to have to change things and move things around. And you're going to go, but my baby, my sweetheart, my doggy, my kitten, scene, the director's like, that's stupid. That's out. And you're like, but my kitten, so soft and fluffy, makes so much sense in story structure. How could you not see that, dumb director? That's stupid. Take it out.
Is it more of a carrots and stick kind of thing with writing too? You give them so much leeway, but then no, this is my thing.
It's the creative endeavor in that respect is symbiotic. So for example, if you're a spec script writer, then you're doing something that's completely right, like crafted, like they're hiring you to write that. If you're writing something completely brand new, that's your own story, where's your creative control for you? Now let me ask you something about creative control, since we're talking about creativity and on-demand creativity. You come to the Hollywood studio and you have a script and you're an unknown. What's the likelihood that the movie is going to be a reflection of your script? What's the percentage likelihood? What'd you say, Culley?
0.
0, yeah. Put that in the mic a little bit louder.
0.
I was going to say less than 5, but that just, oh.
Either you bring a big bag of cash, right? Or they're like, what's your name?
Jake.
Or they're like, Jake's here. Everybody cancel your lunch. Jake's here, and he's going to give us a pitch. Come to the pitch room. Jake is in the building. If you're not Jake is in the building, you're not going to be able to preserve your creative control.
It's not Jake Spielberg, is it?
I wish. It's Jake Lyde, Lyde. Not exactly big screen material, is it?
Yeah.
But hopefully someday.
The writing endeavor, just like music. Like, if we were to sit down and have lunch and just do horror story fun, and you just extrapolated principles out of that,
It's all the same
it's
stuff.
all the same stuff. That's why I love the way they orchestrate these panels, because we're all from different backgrounds. We're all from different, like, I would see what Jonathan does every day, and I'd be like, I have no idea how you're doing that, dude. No clue. I can't relate to what you're doing, but that's awesome. But the moment you start sharing stories about difficult people in the industry, deadlines that like aren't shiftable, but the expectations dramatically are a moving target, all of these things are principles. Writing is the same. So if we put a writer on the other end, or because Steve doesn't like turn to the left, we put it over there, right? Okay. If we put a writer there, I guarantee in their experience in selling their scripts or being hired to write an episode in an episodic and having to conform to the story Bible and the character restrictions within that, they're going to give you the same principles of how the creative process is challenged with other personalities, timeline, money, deadlines, financial implications, legal restrictions, etc. Same stuff.
And I think the advice about practice holds true with any of these things too. I mean, like, start time boxing. Like, how many pages do you do in a day? Do you know that? I mean, can you answer those questions? Are you confident that you can do, if, like from a music standpoint, I would ask a composer how many minutes they can deliver a day. And those are all things you need to know about yourself and get good at, you know, and I think it's really important at the stage, for any of us, but at the stage you're at especially, to make lots of things and not make one perfect thing, right? But just keep making them, keep making.
The best concept artists in the industry that get the gigs for film, guess what they walk around with? A sketchbook,
Computer.
or an iPad with a pencil, and they're while they're waiting for the bus, right? While they're on a plane, guess what they're doing every day?
Mm-hmm.
They're drawing new little concept stuff. That's what they're doing
You know,
every day.
speaking of creative control, though, I've been doing this a long time, and in the early days, I used to take it really personally when I had, you know, I DP'd a lot of miniatures early in my career, and I used to take it really personally when I'd come in and get notes or something, and people would change things, and I'd get pissed off about it, and these are idiots, you know, and I don't anymore because I think I understand my job better. My job is to be a good cameraman, and it's one of those things like you just imagine we're all on a boat, you know, and we're in a storm or something, and there's plenty of people who could sail this boat, but right now the captain has to sail this boat, and he wants to sail it a certain way, and if my job is to make the engines turn, you know, that's my job, and I do that to the best of my ability, and if he wants to go north instead of south, you know, I don't get ticked off about that anymore. You can be the best pilot in the world. You can fly the plane as much as you want. You know, you fly plane. You're supposed to fly your client from Orlando to Bismarck, and halfway up in the air, he decides he wants to go to Newark. Fly to Newark as best you can. You know, it's like there's a whole level of things you can't control, and if you get all upset about those, which is really easy to do early on because it's your baby and it was perfect. It was the most perfect shot that anybody had ever shot. It was beautiful. Did you see it?
Epic.
I cried.
I saw that.
I cried.
Epic.
And now it's all trashed. But it isn't trashed. You're still a good camera guy. You still got the best shot. The guy just didn't want to sell pizza. He wanted to sell the drink next to it. And it's like, all right, dude, I'll sell you the drink. That will be a dramatic drink. That will be a moodily lit drink that people will tell years from now.
Full Sail University water.
Somebody will see this videotape and cry over that water. But you know, I guess I practice my craft more and invest less of myself in the things I cannot control, and invest more of myself in the things I can control. Because I run the best goddamn motion control department in the world, I assure you. And you know.
I think just to add to that, I think when you're not someone who seems really attached to what you've done, it makes it easier for people to give you feedback, and that perpetuates you being sought out to work with. And so, you know, we can talk about how difficult clients are and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, they're people too. And being in the client's role, sometimes it's hard to give people feedback, right? It's hard to go to someone and say, I don't like this. And the people that make me comfortable when I deliver that information are the people I want to go back to and work with more. And they're the people that when they do speak up, I tend to listen to more, because they're not constantly chirping about, that's my thing or this is my thing. But you know, if 1 in 10 times they say, well, you know, here's something to think about, I'm listening. And so it definitely perpetuates that trust relationship.
Put yourself in the other guy's shoes. You know, your director calls some changes, sends some notes. Look, go to, imagine you're at Burger King and you're going, again, with the onions, because I hate onions. I don't want onions. And the guy behind the counter says, no, everybody has onions. I don't want onions. You have to take onions. Why do I have to take onions? Just make it without onions, please. And the director or the producer, he's got 500 guys today who are going to give him the same crap. Just make it without onions. You know, have a little sympathy. It's like tough to give away your baby. Boy, that's the wrong analogy. It's tough to give away
Take my children, please.
It's tough it's tough to give away the authorship, but really, you know, your job is to move the team forward. You know, somebody, you know, it's like, you know, yeah, I'll just shut up.
And what other questions out? There you go.
Hi there, guys. So I just wanted to ask, y'all said earlier that do something cool isn't a plan. And how do you create a plan out of like a blank canvas situation? Like, what are some ways that you inspire yourselves? Like you were saying, concept artists walk around with sketchbooks. What do you guys do for your specific disciplines?
Oh, I try to make something cool. Sorry, no. Well, they come up with, at least with me, they come up with concepts. They find different pitch. You search. These days they scour the internet. They put up some reference. You know, it doesn't have to be that, but I want to do this. You know, they make little books with pitch decks, if you will, but they're called treatments in music videos, pitch decks in other places, and you just assemble. You know, the feel. And then you can take a visual look or an audio look, and you can make an audio look. Yeah, thanks. Pointing that out with a chuckle. It made sense to the audio guy. And then you can get a lookbook or a feel for what it wants for what you want, or you know, draw. Just make a little story. I want lens flares everywhere. I'm J.J. Abrams. You know,
and out comes Star Trek.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I do think, even in the music world, it's about starting to, even if they're from other projects, you know, listening to music from other projects or whatever. It's like starting the conversation with things rather than just words in the music world. I said this in the last panel, but there's that saying that like talking about music is like dancing about architecture. And I try to stop conversations from music for going on for too long without getting some music involved in the conversation and getting people's reactions to that and stuff. So planning, I'm zooming back out, like a good plan is also one that's extremely flexible in my world, in that, you know, the sayings like no plan survives contact with the enemy has been true. I've never had a project where the thing we planned on doing at first was the thing we ended up with ever. Absolutely. And so I think that planning for flexibility is sort of an interesting thing that goes on there too. And it's not so much saying, you know, here are the flexible things built into my plan, but it's just having a plan that's a little bit open. And like Steve was saying earlier, being able to look at a timeline or something and go, well, this is, you know, things are going to be different here than they say, or this is a choke point where we're going to have issues, and just letting your plan sort of form around those things. So the things that you know that are givens, you start to color those in, you know, and then you just leave the rest gray until, and then just roll with it over time, and it kind of works itself out. If you,
I try to run a two-pronged approach. I try to be really good at what we do with the current production chain and archivally and all our legacy tools. And I try to always have a second branch going. I try to peel a couple of things out of each quarter, each shot, each sequence, where I can do something totally new that we've never tried before. I steal shamelessly from other industries. Yeah, don't leave your other industries lying around. I'll take them. That way, yeah, sometimes the new things don't work, but we have a fallback. We're constantly improving the old things, but the new things that do work become part of our palette, and we suck them in, and it's, you know, yet another tool in the palette. And I feel that is important, particularly to physical visual effects, which tends to get very set in its ways. I always make a conscious effort to shave off some part of the project that's not particularly time constrained for new technology, because in the long term that serves me very well. We bring in enough new stuff to keep creative. Some of it crashes badly. It leaves craters. You know, it just throws fragments. It's ugly, scary. But a lot of it works, you know, well enough that we've been pretty lucky at it.
I used to do for the visual stuff that I do. It was all about reference as a starting point. So there's never a blank canvas because you have. I mean, when I was here, there was no internet. HTTP what? I mean, 96. Like question mark. Where am I going? I have no idea. You guys type in Google, type in what you want, hit images, and it just keeps going. Scroll.
We had 28K back then, 96.
Dude, I don't even. I still have that modem sound, you know.
Oh God.
Just waiting, going.
You got mail.
What's this thing gonna look like? So, if you shouldn't have a blank canvas, in my opinion, because you should be filling that with reference as your inspiration starter point, right? So, when we do likeness, when we do human likeness, we're grabbing images everywhere. We don't just sit there and close our eyes and move the mouse and then I think that's Michael. No, it's like, well, what time period are we dealing with? How do we actually pick iconic images that have the emotional state that represents the subjective human of, is this Michael? Oh yeah, that's definitely him. Okay, so there's as Steve was saying, like stealing from other industries. Absolutely, you're looking at other projects that have already been done. I remember I would get like CGW magazine. I don't even know if they make it anymore. And I would sit there, and every time they had an image of like how they did something in a visual effects project, I would literally, and I'm not kidding, I literally like just sit there and stare at it. And the reason because the power of observation is tied into your creativity. And I would sit there and try to figure out, like, what is that? I remember looking at the skeleton for Sony ImageWorks when they did Hollow Man. And they had, like, different joints in different places than what I would expect. And I would go back to that image, like, every day, being like, why did they put that there? And then I would go and I'd try it and try to figure out if I could, like, recreate certain parts of it. And I'd fail and try it again, and I'd fail and try it again. So observing what other people have done, observing your world and bringing that into your creativity, I think it's great to have a blank canvas. I'm not saying that blank canvases are bad. I'm just saying that there's always a place to start in the real world for inspiration. Look at any creature. Every single creature that I've rigged or dealt with has anatomical principles that are found directly on this planet, even though they might come from another planet. But they're definitely connected to something that we can observe and a mishmash of those things.
I'm kind of curious on Steve's crater obsession.
No, I just puppies.
I thought it was the onion thing that I'm more.
I kind of go really dark sometimes.
He wants to throw onions in the craters.
I'm like, did we have onions on the tacos earlier? I don't know. Because I don't know. Okay, yeah. All right.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we've got about 5 more minutes. So I'm going to ask you guys each to touch on. Take yourself back to graduation day. Way back. And think about what you wish somebody would have told you about this crazy on-demand creative process.
Actually, somebody did tell me something when I graduated.
Easy answer.
I came out of the school. They only taught 3 programs, and what I did wasn't what I wanted to do when I graduated. And I talked to my dad, and I said, Dad, I don't really know how to get. I don't know how to get a job with this. This isn't what I wanted to do. And he said, school doesn't teach you how to get a job. It teaches you how to teach yourself. I think that's a great piece of advice.
That is awesome.
Nice.
I think I said this yesterday to the same question, but I would just try to convince myself to stay out of my own way and be patient and just work hard. I mean, I think that when I left here, I was, a lot more ready in my mind than I actually was to do the things that to learn and stuff. So I think that we sort of tell ourselves a lot of stories that may or may not be true, and just to kind of let that stuff go and be in the moment and focus on the work I have to do would be the most important thing I'd tell myself. Keep myself from getting frustrated.
Yeah. I loved what both of you guys said in terms of being in a place. I wish I was in a place earlier in my career where I was able to let go of the things that I couldn't control and just be like, well, that's just the decision that was made, and kind of conform into that relaxation about it and being able to really let it go and get down to my job. Because the reality is that I had way more opportunity to input into something later when I was considered a master of my craft. Fact of the matter is, no one's going to listen to you unless they think that you've already mastered the craft. And I was too engaged with things that I thought were either an injustice or an us versus them without knowing the full context and the breadth of all the decisions that were facing the people that had to make the decision. I wish I was way more patient with myself and with other people about that, and just went, hey, another opportunity to do it over. Exactly what you just said. Another opportunity to do it over.
Early in my career, I worked for Digital Domain. I worked for James Cameron. Now, James, or 25 years ago, Jim, Jim can describe something to you in painstaking detail. He wants what he wants the way he wants it. It's got to do this, and it's got to do that, and it's got to do that. And then the Terminator comes up, and you look through this little hole, and there's the plane with the missile. And you go, yeah, sure, right. But the fact is, when you do it that way, when you do it his way, the shot works. And obviously, he understands something you don't, because he sees the whole picture. And going back to what you said, you kind of have to let go and not get bitter, because you don't have all the information anyway. So, really, I don't know why I went down that diversion. But if there's one piece of advice, I wish my older self could give my younger self, aside from buy Apple stock right now.
Google.
It would be, this is my second career. Before I got into this, I was an electrical engineer. I worked in aerospace. And the reason I got into that is because when I was 10 years old, America put a lander on Mars. And I got up at 4 in the morning to watch the first slow scan television picture come in from Mars, and it came in one line at a time, and it took 25 minutes. And I had sort of an epiphany. I thought this was the coolest thing in the world. We could send this machine out into space, and it could send a postcard home. And then I thought, ordinary people, ordinary human beings, men and women, did this. I am an ordinary human being. By extension, I can do this. Every great accomplishment is just a series of small accomplishments. So my advice would be to step back, breathe, and realize that even though it looks like a crap storm now, your skill set probably covers this if you can just step back, take a deep breath, do not reply to the email. Start picking off the pieces and do it one piece at a time. So my advice, there's a song like Breathe, and that's sort of my advice, You can actually accomplish a heck of a lot more than you think, as long as you can step back and, sort of look at what you're doing, and your skill set is actually broader than you think it is. But, you don't want to look up at this big mound of crap falling on top of you. You want to stand back and go, oh, look, a big mound of crap. Let me grab my shovel and work my way into it. So step back and do not immediately reply to the email, and take it one chunk at a time.
Thank you all so much for being here today. It's been a great session. Thank you to all the students that are here and your questions, and those online and your questions, but especially thank you to Culley, Jonathan, Tim, and Steve for joining us today and sharing your incredible insights. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you. And now